Welcome to a wide open space. Here, our focus is strengthening our faith, cultivating ourselves, and creating lives that we love. I'm your host, Reverend Dr. Nichelle Guidry Stewart. Well, hello, my beautiful sisters and friends, and welcome back to A Wide Open Space. I'm your host, the Reverend Dr. Nichelle Guidry Stewart, and I am so grateful that you have chosen once again to spend another Saturday morning here with me in this intersection of faith, personal development, and out here in this decidedly womanist, wide open space where Black women are unapologetically centered. And today we are talking about something that many of us are experiencing right now, even if you don't have language for it. I'm calling it the invisible shift. And it is that inner transformation that happens on the inside before anything changes on the outside. It is the shift in how you feel about a thing, how you think about it, and how you show up to it before the actual circumstances of your life reflect that change. This episode is for those of us who are sensing that something is shifting on the inside of us. Maybe you're feeling differently about your job, your relationship, your calling, your season. Maybe you're thinking about things in ways that you've never thought about them before. Maybe you are showing up to your daily obligations and responsibilities with a different energy, a different posture, a different level of engagement. But on the outside, nothing has changed. But on the inside, something is definitely shifting. This episode is for you. So today we're exploring how God transforms us from the inside before we see a changed life on the outside. This episode is all about the invisible shifting that precedes visible change. It is that inner knowing that comes before outer transition. It is that spiritual preparation that happens underground in the secrecy, in the solitude of our spirits before anything breaks through the soil of our lives. And because this is the last day of Black History Month, my favorite month of the year, I want to draw a really compelling parallel. As I was thinking about this, it got me to thinking about my studies, and it got me to thinking about what we in the Theological Academy would call the invisible institution. Before there was the Black church as we know it today, there were the secret worship gatherings in the hush harbors of the American South. There were those spiritual gatherings where our enslaved ancestors risked everything to gather in secret places, in the slave quarters, in hidden spaces, just to worship, just to pray, to prepare their spirits for the day, the week, the time that is ahead, but also to prepare their spirits for a freedom that they could not yet see. That invisible spiritual work, that underground formation laid the foundation for the visible institution that would eventually emerge. And we call this institution the Black Church. As Dr. Albert Raboteau has coined it, is the forerunner to the Black Church as it came to be formalized much later. And in the same way, God does invisible work in us, underground work, internal transformation that prepares us for external changes in our lives that we can't yet see. So I'm going to share a story from my own life about recognizing an invisible shift and what happened when I tried to negotiate with it rather than to surrender to it. And then I'm going to give you some simple practices for noticing the inner shifts that might be happening in you at this time. But first, let's go to the word. Today's devotional is going to come to us from the book of Ecclesiastes. This is one of the wisdom books in the Old, better known as the Hebrew Testament, Ecclesiastes 3:11. Let's ground again in scripture, where the word it says, God has made everything beautiful in its time. God has also set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. Okay. So now you see why this book is included in the wisdom books. There is so much wisdom in this one verse. First, it says that God has made everything beautiful in God's time, in its time. Not in our time, not on our schedule, in its time. This is what we can refer to as divine timing or the right time, or the time when all the invisible work has been completed and we're actually ready for what is on the horizon. But then there's this second part of this verse that I really want us to hear today. It says, God has also set eternity in the human heart. God has set eternity in our hearts. As I've sat with this verse, I think very high level, I think that it means that we are wired to sense things before they actually happen. We are designed to move in synchronicity with the Spirit. And we have, as part of our spiritual toolkit and also as a part of our survival mechanisms as Black women, we have an internal knowing, spiritual intuition, this ability to feel the shifts in our lives before we can actually see them. But the tension in this knowing is present in the second clause of that verse. It says, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. We sense the shift. We feel something changing. We know something is coming, not because we have empirical proof, but because our spirit says so. We don't have, here's the tension, we don't have all the details. We can't see the full picture. We don't know the when, the how, or the what exactly. But I think this is the invitation to trust in the beauty of divine timing. To trust that while you might not know the particulars, the who, the what, the how, the when, if you are discerning and you're open, you'll get the message. You'll sense the shift and you will know, get ready, because a change is definitely coming. And in my life, I have come to recognize that the invisible shifts in our lives are really God's mercy. It's God's preparation. God is literally preparing us internally for what is coming externally. It's God giving you time to surrender, to root down, to make peace with the ending of one season, and to prepare and to get excited for the beginning of another. And here's what I believe, sisters. We move in synchronicity with the Spirit. When we are discerning, when we're paying attention, when we're open, when we're not resisting what we're sensing, that's when we receive the message. We feel the shift. We know. But the question is, what do we do with that knowing? And here is where I want to share a little bit of a story. And this meditation or this testimony, the story here is all about recognizing and trusting the invisible shift. So let me tell you about a time when I experienced an invisible shift and what I learned about negotiation and surrender in that process. Not very long before my last job ended, I was approaching the pulpit. I was putting my purse down. This moment is so clear and so vivid in my memory. I remember everything about it. The only thing I really can't remember is what I was wearing, but I remember the exact seat I was pulling up to. I remember putting my purse down on the ground beneath the chair, and quite randomly, or so it seemed, my spirit said to me, "You won't be here much longer." Now, this was not an audible voice. This wasn't a prophetic word that came from somebody else. This was an inner knowing, an inner word that shook me. It was certainly not of me because I loved that job and I loved that place. This was a shift in my spirit, a sense that something was changing, even though nothing had really changed yet. And so, like I said, I heard this word immediately. And instead of surrendering to it, I immediately began negotiating in my mind and in my spirit. I was good at that job. I loved it. I felt that I was making an impact. Why would I be leaving? But the knowing persisted from that moment on. You won't be here much longer. Looking back, I can see now that there were other inner shifts happening during that time. Shifts that I didn't fully recognize because I was really busy negotiating with what my spirit was telling me. I had gotten to a point where I felt like I could do the work in my sleep. As much as I loved it, it was no longer challenging. And I felt like I had sort of maxed out on the possibilities for my professional growth and development, but also maxed out on the innovation that I could do in the ministry that I was doing in that particular space. Another shift is that I had just graduated with my PhD, and I was really, really excited about what kind of opportunities might come my way as a result of earning my degree. And I was beginning to think about what my next steps might be, even though I wasn't actively seeking, the next job or whatever. These were some inner shifts, changes in how I was feeling about my work, changes in how I was thinking about my future, changes in my level of engagement, and also my level of excitement about the work. And this is not to say that I did not still love my job, love my workplace, love the people that I worked with, but I think that I had learned so much and grown so much and gotten to the place where the possibilities that were available at that time had been fulfilled. On the outside, though nothing had changed, I was still showing up and still doing the work. I was still in the position. Something on the inside, a lot of things on the inside were shifting. And then, not even months later, sure enough, the job did come to an end. And it came to end in a very sudden way. And even though my spirit had told me I wouldn't be there much longer, even though I had been sensing on the inside that things were shifting, I was still really caught off guard because I had spent that in between time negotiating and trying to figure out how to work my way around the not being there much longer instead of yielding to it, instead of surrendering to it. And here's what I learned in that time and in the time that has transpired and in my reflections, that the inner knowing is really not about having a strategy for what's coming next. The inner knowing, the shifting, the internal and visible shift is really about surrender. There is no way that you can tell the future. There's no way you can know the future. And I don't care how much you prepare for it. I don't care how much you plan for it. Anything can change. Anything can happen. And so that inner knowing is just about settling in that moment, anchoring down, rooting down, and yielding to some peace before some major change happens. And when God gives you that inner knowing, when you sense that shift is happening internally before anything changes on the outside, that is not about logistics. That is about posture. That is about preparation. That is about, again, learning to become grounded and peaceful in the present while you allow your future now to unfold. In retrospect, I really feel like that inner knowing came after I had done everything that I could do to steward the season that I was in, to accomplish the objectives that were before me, to be a faithful, steward of every blessing that had been given to me. And I think that knowing came at the point where, I guess in the words of Paul / Donnie McClurkin, after you've done all you can, you stand. You stand. You stand. And I do think in retrospect that had I not immediately gone into this mode of negotiating and trying to figure out how to stay comfortable, essentially, I probably wouldn't have been so surprised when it was time to move on. So again, I think the inner knowing, the invisible shift was an act of God's mercy. It was a forewarning. It was God saying, I'm preparing you. I am about to turn the page in your life. A change is coming. And I really just want you to surrender. I want you to trust me. Let me do the invisible work in you that needs to happen before this visible shift occurs. And looking back, I can absolutely see that while it was quite disruptive to me personally, there was a flow and a trajectory that was unfolding in my life. I can definitely see, as Ecclesiastes writes, that there was some beautiful divine timing that was happening. It led me to work that was new and challenging, work that stretched me, work that challenged me and excited me, and where there was just so much new energy and new excitement and new possibilities. And I got to do some of the work that I had been dreaming of. And it set me up for a season of actually being able to put that PhD to work. But I had to go through those invisible shifts, y'all, that inner preparation, that spiritual readying, that surrender that can often and that does often precede real breakthrough and transformation. So I want to tie this back to the invisible institution, because this, to me, there are resonances between our ancestors and the invisible institution, because before the Black church as we know it existed, there was this invisible underground spiritual work happening where, again, our enslaved ancestors gathered in secret to worship, to pray, to prepare their spirits, and to cultivate their faith, once again, for a freedom they could not yet see. They couldn't see that their secret meetings would turn into a movement of Black folk of Christian faith who would take their faith and turn the world, turn the country right side up. They couldn't see that churches would be built and denominations would form and liberation movements would be led by Black clergy and faith leaders. They were simply doing the invisible work that made all of that possible. And I'm sure if I could, in the words of some of the great Black preachers, use my sanctified imagination, I'm sure they were having inner shifts themselves, shifts in how they understood themselves, how they understood God, how they understood freedom before their circumstances changed. But when the external situation did change, when the emancipation did come, these were spiritually ready people because of the work they did in quiet and in secret all along. I think they paint for us an eternally resonant picture that this is how God works, from the inside out, not from the outside in. We see this pattern in nature too. Seeds do not immediately sprout the moment they're planted. Before we ever see the semblance of the seed in its flourishing form, that seed must germinate underground. Invisible work is happening. The seed coat is softening. The root is emerging. The stem is forming, all before anything breaks through the soil. Trees don't produce fruit in winter, but they're not dormant in the way we think. They're not dormant in the ways that meets our eye. They're strengthening their root systems. They're building their connection to each other. They're storing up their energy. They're getting ready for spring. Invisible work is exactly what makes that visible growth possible. And my favorite example from the natural world is that a caterpillar does not just become a butterfly overnight. It enters the chrysalis. And inside that chrysalis, invisible transformation is happening. The caterpillar is quite literally dissolving and reorganizing at a cellular level. When the butterfly emerges, it looks like some sudden transformation, but it is the result of invisible work. And this is reminding me of why I always say to my mentees and to my students that when you see someone whose life is inspiring to you and that you may even begin to feel yourself feeling envious of, pause in nurturing those feelings because you never know what their invisible process entailed. You never know what they had to go through. You never know how they had to dissolve like the caterpillar did. You never know what they had to sacrifice or what was taken from them before they could become the butterfly that you see. There's always something happening before that visible flourishing happens. This is how God works. That invisible shifts precede visible changes. Inner transformation prepares us for outer transition. The work that God does in us, in our hearts, in our minds, in our spirits, and how we move through the world before anyone notices, all of this comes as a result of what God does in quiet. All of this comes before the work God does in our outside circumstances. So let me ask you, how do you recognize the invisible shift in yourself? How do you recognize when you're in the middle of an invisible shift? I want to suggest just a couple of signs. One, you're feeling differently about something that used to excite you. Maybe it's your job, your relationship, your living situation, your church, your friend group. You cannot quite put your finger on it, but your energy is shifted. Number two, you're thinking differently about your future. Possibilities you never considered are suddenly on your mind. Doors you never noticed are suddenly visible. Questions you never asked yourself are suddenly urgent and really on your heart to sit with. Number three, you are showing up differently, maybe with less enthusiasm, or maybe with a different kind of energy, more detached, more observational, less invested. You're still there, but something about your presence has changed. Number four, you've got some shifting curiosities and interests that may be the sort of interest that kept you in your current place maybe it's run its course, or maybe it's time to put it in dialogue with your new interests and some new curiosities that maybe are drawing you in a little bit of a new direction. Finally, you have an inner knowing that won't go away. It's a sense that something is shifting, and no matter how hard you try to act like everything is normal, you cannot ignore it. You are sensing that something is shifting, changing, ending, or beginning. There is a whisper in your spirit that keeps saying, pay attention, or get ready, or it won't be much longer. If you are experiencing any of these, you might be in the throes of an invisible shift. And the question becomes, what do you do with that? What do you do with that inner shift? And here's what I've learned. Don't negotiate. Surrender. When you sense that the invisible shift is happening in you, your first instinct might be to resist it, to talk yourself out of it, to explain it away, to tell yourself you're imagining things or being dramatic or not trusting God enough to be at peace with what you have. But what if the inner knowing is exactly how God is speaking to you in this season? What if the inner shift, again, is God's mercy giving you time to prepare, to process, and to surrender? Now, surrender does not mean that you stop showing up to your present responsibilities. If I was preaching this, I'd tap on the pulpit and say it again. Surrender does not mean that you stop showing up to your present responsibilities. Surrender doesn't mean quit your job or quit your man or quit your partner or make some drastic change based on a feeling. But surrender does mean that you stop negotiating with what your spirit is telling you. You acknowledge, I'm sensing that something is shifting, God. I just want to create a little space in my life to sit with it. I want to create some space in my life to get ready, to be reflective. It's rooting down in peace right here in the present while you do some allowing, while you allow some flow to let this future peace unfold in your life. Surrender means that you trust that God is doing something invisible in you, work you need before the visible change comes. As I'm talking this through, I'm remembering a sermon that I heard my soror, Reverend Leah Jackson, preach in Sisters Chapel. And in her sermon, I think she was talking about Jacob's wrestling with God before God took him into the place of his next level of leadership and influence. This was the fight, the wrestling, the tussle, where Jacob's name was changed to Israel. And she talked about the significance of that spiritual back and forth, being about like really working out. Like there are some things in you that can't go with you to the next place that I'm calling you. Like you've got some character issues, you've got some impatience, you've got some dishonesty, you've got some integrity issues that I think the title of her sermon was, "We can't go in like this. We can't go in." And so, sometimes that inner shift is about we need to work some things out before we elevate, because these are things that won't make it. And if you try to take them, they could squander the elevation that you have been praying for. And so this is really an invitation to pause, to sit, to surrender, and to prepare. Let God work some things out in you while God is also preparing some things for you. So let's do some noticing. All right. We're going to end here. This is your exercise, and I want to call this the noticing practice. This is your practice for this week, and it is designed to help you just pay a little bit of closer attention to any invisible shifts that might be happening in you right now. This is not about forcing your clarity or creating timelines. This is just about creating some space to notice, to sit, to surrender, to get with God and let God know, I hear you. Okay. So here's part one. Notice the inner shift. Take some time to sit quietly with these questions and write down what comes up without judgment or editing. Ask yourself, one, what is changing in how I feel about a particular area of my life? My job, my relationship, living situation, my calling, my community. Before I say the next question, I want you to just keep this one area in mind as we go through this exercise. Okay. So, number one, what's happening and how I feel about this area? Number two, ask yourself, what's changing in how I'm thinking about it? Am I imagining new possibilities? Am I asking different questions? Am I seeing things that I didn't see before? And number three, what's changing in how I show up to it? Is my energy different? How's my engagement level? What's my sense of investment or detachment? And with these three questions, I just want you to notice. Don't explain it away. Don't judge yourself. Don't assign any values or valuations. Just don't talk yourself out of it, out of what you're sensing. Just notice it and take the time to name it. Okay. And now part two, I want you to sit with it. Sit with what you're noticing. And what do I mean by sitting with it? I want you to just create some space to listen to what this inner shift might be trying to tell you. And ask yourself, what is this inner shift trying to tell me? What have I learned in this place and in this season that will serve me in my next place? Are there any qualities, characteristics, habits, mindsets, or systems that cannot go with me to my next level? Next, what change might be on the horizon, even if I can't see it yet? And finally, what invisible work might God be doing in me right now? being called to make some peace with some things? Am I being called to just be reflective on my journey? Am I being called to deepen my roots? Am I being called to just be quiet for some time? Am I being called to serve and show up in a new way? What is the invisible work that's happening in you? You don't have to have all the answers with these questions, sisters. You don't need to know the when, the how, or the what. Just sit and listen for what God's Spirit is saying. And finally, I want you to practice surrender. This step is about releasing the negotiation and rooting down in trust. Ask yourself, where might I be negotiating with my inner shift instead of surrendering? What am I resisting that I'm sensing? And why am I resisting it? What would it feel like to root down while my future unfolds? And what do I need to surrender to God right now? I want you to take some time to complete this sentence in your journal or your notes app, whatever you're using. God, I surrender, ... And I want you to let yourself write whatever needs to be surrendered. Maybe it's the need to control the timing of the thing. Maybe it's your attachment to the thing. Maybe it's your fear of what's coming. Maybe it's your comfort in the place that you're in. Maybe it's your resistance to change. Maybe it's in, I don't know, only you know. What are you resisting? Write it out. Speak it out loud if you feel so led, and practice the posture of surrender. This invisible shift, once again, is the mercy of God. It is God showing you, I'm giving you a little window to prepare. Some change is on the way, okay? And I want you to be ready. It's God inviting you to trust in the divine timing, even when you can't see the full picture. You don't have to have everything figured out right now. Just notice, just sit, surrender, and let God work. And I want to say that as ambitious women, sometimes surrender can be really hard. But as women of faith, we have to believe that the author and finisher of our faith is writing a story that we could not top on our best day, that we've put some seeds in the ground. And God has seen to it that those seeds have been nurtured. And if we are being called to step back and stop toiling so much, then that means God is about to cause some harvest in our lives. And let me just say, I am excited about that. I just got excited about that in my spirit, not just for me, but for you. So you let me know. You let me know what unfolds as a result of your surrender. Okay? Let's get ready to wrap up. Once again, y'all, God has set eternity in your heart. You are wired to sense the shifts before you ever lay eyes on them. You are designed to move in synchronicity with the Spirit of God. And when you are discerning and when you are open, you will receive the message. Get ready. Change is coming. And trust that God has made everything beautiful in its time. If this episode is stirring something in you, I would love it if you would take some time to write me. You can find me on the DMs. You can even text me via the podcast description. You can write me an email. Let me know, is it stirring something in you? And then I'd love it if you would take the time to share this episode with someone else who you know. Sis, you and me are in the same space. We are shifting together. Send this over to them. Let them know this was a blessing to me. And I hope it is to you too. So on that note, thank you for spending your Saturday morning with me in this wide open space. Please like, subscribe, and share this podcast with another sister who needs to hear it. And I will see you soon.